this week is cult movies, and we're going to have an expert on the subject. Well, come on, two experts, because first off, there's no question I'm going to be bringing to this conversation one of my closest, bestest buddies and an expert on super obscure movies, Mr. Richard Whittaker, who is not currently on camera. Oh, wait, there he is. Hello.
I'm back.
Of course you are. So pleased to see you. I haven't seen Richard since all this began.
Nonsense.
No, I had to go watch British television just to feel like he was in my heart still.
Oh, I will always be clogging your arteries, Chris. Don't worry about that.
This is true. I still have all that cheese you gave me. So, yeah.
Hey, it is the greatest edition of the world that the world ever got from the UK. I mean, that and chess and imperialism. And even we didn't invent chess, so what are we going to do?
Yeah, but besides that, what have the British ever done for us?
Black pudding?
No, we don't have that here.
Oh, you should. Of course I'm British in person. Actually, whenever I'm at film festivals. Oh, do you remember film festivals?
Yes, dimly. I wonder whether we will ever see another one again. Quite frankly,
we will. But I always say to PR people when I talk to them is like, just look for the tall, hairy Englishman. And apparently that is enough of a description in Austin. So I'm not quite sure, like, whether it's the hairiness or the Englishness that shines through. But it's apparently that's all it takes.
Well, our other guest is here. I'd like to welcome the producer and creator of the documentary series Time Warp, the greatest cult movies ever made. We all went ahead and reviewed the first one. We've got 2 more reviews coming out for the second 2. That would be Paul Fishbein. How are you doing, Paul?
Hi, how you guys doing? Sorry about that little technical flub.
Oh, that's okay. No one would have known if you hadn't said anything.
Well, I just, I should have checked earlier, but what can I tell you?
Hey, no worries at all. Paul, this is Richard Whittaker. He is the head of the Austin Chronicle here.
Hi,
in Austin,
how are you?
Texas, and he's their head film dork.
That's me. That's pretty much the best way to describe me.
And literally knows probably more about cult films than any other person I could think of. He knows, I think I know a lot about obscure cult movies. He'll pull out some stuff I've never heard of, and then I'll look it up and I'll be like, "There's a massive cult following." I'm like, how?
No, but the trick is that I just name British stuff that you've never heard of. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like, Carry On films. And you're like, that's probably a thing.
No, we know the Carry On films. Withnail and I was suggested for our cult film doc, but it didn't make the cut, even though I know we pissed a lot of people off. So we always say, we have a big list in case we do more volumes. So
you'll never run out, really.
No.
There's always a cult for every film, I find.
That is extremely true. I've been surprised by some of the films I found out years later that I just thought were terrible, and that was the last we would ever have to hear of them. That ended up being, no, there's a cult around them. Like, for instance, and I don't usually do this soon, but I'm going to go ahead and do this because this seems like a very relevant news story, is Space Jam. How in the hell did that become a cult film? But here we are, and they are putting out Space Jam 2, Space Jam: A New Legacy. It actually has the title. That is a real thing that happened to humanity. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, all of you, from being incapable of separating your nostalgic feelings from childhood when you had no taste and what is actually good or bad. You don't see me going around saying, man, we should put Escape to Witch Mountain in the Library of Congress, because we shouldn't.
Are you sure?
No, I'm positive.
I'm not sure that'd be the worst edition that's gone in there. I mean, because didn't we already get Die Hard in there? So I think if Die Hard's in there, then we've opened the gates a little bit. So,
well, Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, and just a brief thing for anyone who isn't familiar with Time Warp, the greatest cult films ever made.
Well, I'm an independent producer here in LA, and this was, I think, we talked about it on the podcast. This was my dream project, to create something that for film lovers, made by film lovers, for film lovers, and that's to celebrate the films that we grew up with in the 70s and the 80s, that I went to repertory cinemas to see, midnight screenings, and to sort of celebrate the underbelly, the movies that aren't necessarily on the American Film Institute top 100 American films of all time, but that have cult followings for various reasons. And so this was a dream project. It took 3 years. to complete. It's a 3-part series. Part 1, called Midnight Madness, is out on the market now, through streaming, Amazon and iTunes and Apple TV and all of that. And part 2 comes out in about 2 weeks, and that's on the cult horror and sci-fi. And then a month after that, cult comedies and campy films. And it's the running time, if you add it all together, is over 5.5 hours. And we just felt the best way to release it was one at a time. Otherwise, you're overwhelmed. And they all stand alone. They're individual. You can watch them in any order because they all stand alone in their own genres.
So you obviously are a fan yourself of cult movies, or you wouldn't have bothered putting this thing together.
Yeah. This is a lifetime dream project for me.
So do you feel, I'm thinking about this, and I think one of the reasons why I was so taken with what you're doing and the idea that you don't want to stop is that it reminds me of like when you would have gatherings of friends and you would just show them, everyone would take a turn playing an album for each other they'd discovered. They were like, check this out, man, you got to check this out. And it was kind of like this cultural exchange, and you got really proud of something that you liked became a hit with everybody else. Cult movies is kind of like the movie equivalent of that. We're like, we're all like, oh yeah, man, you've never seen Jodorowsky. Let me tell you something. I got to show you something.
Obviously I'm a lot older than you guys. So we're talking pre-social media. We're talking pre-internet. We're talking pre-DVD. We're talking pre-VHS. When you wanted to see something, you had to go to the theater to see it. So if a film failed at the box office, it was done. And so it was sort of the organic nature of these cult films that they would play at repertory cinemas. You would see it. You would like it. Harold and Maude was the example of the first cult film I saw when I was 17 because my journalism teacher in high school told me to see it. And then I couldn't wait to take people to see it. I couldn't wait to tell people about it. And there was no home video. So Harold and Maude lived and died at the box office. And then it started to find this cult following. And the joy, like you said, of being able to take somebody and showing them that, and it blows their mind, and then they tell people, and then they tell people, and it had a very organic quality. Whereas today, a movie comes out and everybody knows about it, and everybody can see it, and there's a million ways to get to it. And it was special then. And I don't like to live in the past. I'm not that nostalgic, but there was something special about knowing something and nobody else knew about it, and you got to teach them. You got to tell them about it.
Totally agree. So I want to put it to the audience. You guys, with trying to avoid the really obvious answers, ask us about some cult films. I want to see some people like suggest some stuff. And if it's not one that's covered by the movies, although I'll be glad to say, please, and watch Time Warp Chapter, what have you, to see the explanation of that. Ask us about some cult movies because I would love to talk about them. Richard, I know, has some rather eclectic tastes. Richard, give me one of your eclectic tastes of favorite cult movies. I want to see what Paul has to say about that.
It's one that comes up surprisingly often, and I think it kind of tanked at the time, but it's one that I think is sign of like how a cult develops, and a lot of it is now people realizing, oh, there are other people who liked it. I just thought it was me. Is Walter Hill's Streets of Fire, which at the time tanked. Everybody was like, how did this get made? And they were planning a trilogy, and it just never was going to happen because it tanked. I think that they actually sold more copies of the soundtrack than they did tickets. And Walter Hill famously was asked, well, why wasn't it successful? He said, because nobody went to see it. Which is one of the all-time great self-deprecating comments from but for me, Streets of Fire is like now a definitional cult film because it's gained traction over time. And I think, for me, that's part of what defines a cult film is like it endures and picks up momentum. And I think, but that's something I was wondering about, Paul. Is like, for you, what defines a cult film? Because it's not just a film that like has a few people who like it or has gained a little bit of like. There seems to be a point where you go, this is a cult film. Like for you, what is it that puts it over that line?
Well, have you seen the documentary yet?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Make sure that I get you a copy immediately, whenever.
I can just forward him the email that you guys sent me.
Do that.
Excellent.
Because every single person we interviewed, and we interviewed about 120 people for this series, we asked them that question. what is a cult film to you? And as you'll see when the film opens up, there's a montage of people defining a cult film, and everybody's correct. For me, it was a movie that generally failed at the box office or didn't have much of a big audience, and for some reason found that audience through midnight screenings, through repertory cinemas, through home video, and became a phenomenon and a success many years later. It's the repeatability, it's the knowing the lines, it's being able to tell people about it. It creates a cult of people that are in the know. To your Walter Hill comment, we included the Warriors, and we have a huge amount of the cast of the Warriors in this. And the reason we picked the Warriors is it really was sort of a controversial film when it came out. There was a lot of violence. It was almost shut down. It didn't really do well. And then years later, you look at what the Warriors is, and they have conventions. They have Warriors conventions where these cultists dress as the characters, and they go and they screen the film, and there's 10,000 people watching this movie and screaming out the lines. I didn't know this until we did our research that there was a Warriors convention. And so it seems to me that it does have to have sort of an afterlife. You know, Streets of Fire, we talked about Streets of Fire, and it was on our big list of 250 that we, of course, had to whittle down to 50. But we felt that of the Walter Hill films, the Warriors had a little more culty, had more of a following, of a bigger cult following.
Right.
Also, but it failed at the box office.
Well, it was the same thing. Like so one of our critics questioned, why is the Big Lebowski on here? I'm like, honey, please. There are yearly Big Lebowski festivals where everyone dresses up like the characters, quotes along with the movie. If that's not a cult film, I don't know what is. Plus, that movie didn't really perform that well when it came out.
No, it was of all the Coen Brothers films, it was one of their worst openings. It kind of died. And once we spoke and we interviewed Jeff Bridges, he loves that movie. I mean, he was so excited to talk about it because it is one of their best and funniest films, but it's so subversive, and that I don't think people just didn't get it. And and again, home video has a lot to do with this because a lot of films failed at the box office, and we talked about Office that was a total failure at the box office, but home video made it, just created the hit, created the fact that it was then a cult film. So, and a lot of films sort of had that. I think Big Lebowski was part of that home video revolution.
Agreed. That was a big. When I walked into it, and you'll get this, Richard, a mutual friend, Mark Savlov, who's been a film critic in Austin for 25 years plus.
Mark Savlov, who was notoriously once described as the meanest film critic in America.
Right. Well,
I was very proud of that statement.
I had shown up to see the Big Lebowski, and he was walking out. I was like, "Oh man, what'd you think?" He's like, "Great." And he turned around and got in line. He's like, "Oh, are you seeing a different movie?" He's like, "No, I'm seeing Big Lebowski again." Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that happens.
Isn't that part of it? I mean, like, there are very few films that I go, "Oh my God, I can't wait to see this again immediately." But a lot of the films that I felt that way about and gone back to immediately that day, the next day, have not been the films that are in my top 100 of all time list of like, this is the great movies. They're the movies for whatever reason, it's a whole different way that they hit you.
Yeah. And again, being an older now, some of the films that are in the documentary that we were doing, I hadn't seen in 30 or 40 years, and they played completely different. Like, my memory of what they were when I first saw them and what they are now is completely different. It's like a brand new movie. Something like Eraserhead that I just thought was the coolest thing ever. When I sat in the cinema and watched it, I couldn't get through it this time. I just couldn't get through it. It's beautiful to look at, and it's clearly a cult film, and it was one of the great midnight movies, but it played differently when I first saw it. I think its technology has caught up.
Well, I think that's one of the things about cult films that maybe makes them so effective is that you do get different effects from them over time because they're so odd. They so stand outside of time. Seems to be a recurring thing with a lot of the truly great cult films. I actually have a question for you specifically. I asked this during the review. So Samuel Fuller is obviously a big deal in cinema and a big deal in cult cinema. I was startled that you picked The Naked Kiss over Shot Corridor, and I'm curious to know why that was. Because Shot Corridor, I always see on everyone's list.
Yeah,
that's the cult film.
We actually were going to do both together, and it was just everything was getting too long. I think that was pushed by me personally because I liked it. I like Naked Kiss better, and I really wanted to talk about that opening. The other part of it was that we had Michael Dante and Constance Towers. Now Constance Towers dropped out, and so we thought we were getting her, but we had Michael Dante. So sometimes if you have two equal films and only room for one, like I mentioned to you before, if you can get somebody that was in it, then that sort of pushed it over. I know what you mean about Shot Corridor, but I thought putting both of them in would have been a little, for audiences, I think they wouldn't have, it's a little obscure,
That's fair. One of our fans, Dennis, says there are very few good remakes of cult films. Any insights on the problem? The Blob is a great example. I don't know if it's a problem per se. The Blob's a terrific example of how they did a remake, and in some ways it's even more of a cult film than the original.
Because remakes suck generally, right? I mean, Richard, you agree, right? I mean, how many great remakes have there been? I mean, I defy you to name,
the Crazies.
No, I love the original, George Romero.
But the remake is better.
I don't, whatever. We could argue this, but seriously, I mean, maybe The Fly.
Yeah, great example.
With Jeff Goldblum.
I think the thing is that if you take a classic, particularly a cult classic, what makes it work is there's something very individual about it. So the only ways to do a remake that work are something like The Fly, where you basically go, well, here's the original. Let's take everything about it and throw it out. So that's why, The Thing works. That actually what they, really, I mean, it's nominally a remake, but really it's not. It's a new adaptation of Who Goes There. They pretty much throw out, bar a handful of homage shots to Howard Hawks. Like the rest of it is just, it's a new film. And I think that's the thing. You've got to be prepared to go, what I love about the film is everything I can't do about it. I think that's particularly true in cult films.
Yeah, you just said it. It's so unusual. It's so unique. It's so unto itself. There's never been anything like it. Why would you try to remake that? Just in your mind, imagine somebody trying to. Just imagine that. It can't be done. Or the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It just can't be done. There's no rhyme or reason to try to remake something that, for whatever reason, ended up perfect.
And even then, you've got other films as well when they tried to emulate what they'd done with Rocky Horror Picture Show, and also in a way do what they tried to do with the Rocky Horror Picture Show and didn't feel that the audience picked up on with Shock Treatment. And there's a reason why people don't do midnight screenings of Shock Treatment. It's not good.
I tried. I did try.
Tough.
I went a crowd. We tried. Yeah. We talked the theater into playing it. We got 2 nights. Nobody showed up except for the hardest of hardcore Rocky fans, and they're like, "We're not doing this."
One of your readers just said something I think that's true. He said Ocean's 11 is the best remake, and considering the original Ocean's 11 wasn't even a film, I agree 100%. The Ocean's 11, the Soderbergh Ocean's 11.
The original barely qualifies.
It's really a movie. So Ocean's 11 by Soderbergh's terrific remake. So
hey, the original Ocean's 11 started a genre of movies because when Adam Sandler decided, hey, I can get Netflix to give me a bunch of money to go on vacation with my friends, and we just mess around in front of the camera for a while, and then we can come back and they're going to pay us a few million for it. Because that's what Ocean's 11, the original Ocean's 11 is. It's just they paid the Rat Pack. The Rat Pack were in Vegas anyway, and they just let them mess around.
I think there's certain examples of remakes that qualify as being films that become the film you think of, where they took this idea, this decent little film, and made it into a truly great film. Ocean's 11 is an example. The Thing is an example. The Maltese Falcon is an example. There are other examples as well. It's just like cover songs where you find out some of the all-time greatest songs were actually not originals. It's startling. You're like, holy shit, that was not by them. They were all originally by Dolly Parton is what I figured out.
I actually did a live tweet along the other day to the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. The number of people who did not know that I Will Always Love You is a Dolly Parton song. It's pretty shocking. I mean, the
All right,
film's not
guys.
good.
Audience, search your brains. Name something that is a cult film that is not obvious. I'm looking at you, Harmony. I asked, and you said Rocky Horror Picture Show. For fuck's sakes, his documentary is called Time Warp.
Clue is in there somewhere. I think there's a couple of giveaways.
A cult film, and I mean, like, search your brains. You know what is true. Find what those answers are, and I will ask. Oh, here we go already. Ben Glassell with Lockout. I don't know, dude. Lockout?
Stretching the definition.
Paul, what do you think? Does that count?
I don't even know what Lockout is.
And good on you, sir.
I don't even know what that is. And I'm a film buff. I don't know what that is.
I think we can all agree Zardoz counts.
Yeah, Zardoz is one. It's another one that was on our list that you can't do everything. So you kind of have to pick and choose and hope you can do more.
The penis is bad. The guns are good, though. I think we can all agree on that.
And what's fascinating is that you do, you have films that come in and out of having that kind of cult status. And Zardoz is a classic example. When it came out, there was just people were fascinated with it because it was so bad. And then it had this weird resurgence in the 80s, and then it disappeared again. And it was really like 5 or 6 years ago, I started seeing people talking about Zardoz again. And they have these lives. And the weirder ones for me are the ones that not just have that life of coming in and out of fashion, but actually eventually end up in, the respectable canon. And Lebowski's the classic example. I mean, it is in, so many 100 lists. And when people were doing their end of the century lists, like Lebowski suddenly started cropping up. And I'm like, I remember opening night, and this was not the response back then.
No,
it was much cooler, much kind of, people didn't get what they were doing. They were wanting Miller's Crossing again.
Well,
they wanted a straight noir rather than on them going.
Yeah, the truth is like a fine wine. Some movies just really age well. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I know. There are lots of films that open and they get bad reviews and they're forgotten. And then years later, I finally see them and I go, wait, why was that? That's a good film. Like nobody got. And I think there's something really cool about this, and you find that all the time. And the older they get, the better they get. And I think it's that most of these films, that's the case.
Yeah, there's constantly new examples coming out. Like a lot of our fans are and our contributors are suggesting stuff that are certainly more recent. Like one I consider to be one of the biggest cult films of the last 20 years, Donnie Darko, that people just examine and re-examine. And unfortunately, they put out a director's cut, which just went to prove that the director lost his goddamn mind after he released the initial cut of Donnie Darko. It's a great enigmatic film that people are going to be talking about for probably decades.
Yeah, it's another one that's on our big list, and hopefully we get a chance to do more.
Dread is another one which bombed, but boy, people will not shut up about it. I mean, it's a great movie. It's a great little action movie, but I never would have guessed in a million years why would that particular failed action movie, of all the failed action movies that come out all the time, be the one that everyone will not shut up about.
It has a quality. There's a quality. It's always a quality or something that captures the attention of the people. That sort of is. That's why anybody who sets out to make a cult film will fail. You can't make a cult film. It happens organically. There's a reason. Sometimes you don't even understand the reason. Like The Room. Yeah. The Room is a great example of you cannot understand how that became the phenomenon it is. But something happens that, because it's failed seriousness. I mean, he was trying to make a serious film, and,
it's a product of kind of a crazy person, the way that in the Ed Wood films are kind of a product of a crazy person. I mean, crazy obviously is the most vague term you could possibly use, but you know what I mean? A person who is not normal, decidedly, and has different ideas of what is acceptable. And that movie is this window inside his head that is a miracle it got made at all, and that's part of the attraction. I'm honestly personally offended to some level by people who try to recreate that falsely. Like I'm 1,000% convinced Birdemic is just that, of someone going, we're going to pretend that we're crazy people making a movie that don't know it's bad. And there's no way. No one would make that movie. I'm sorry. I watched people call that a cult movie. I'm like, that's fake cult movie news.
I think the other thing with cult movies is it's nothing to do with the filmmaker.
Yeah.
It's all comes straight from the audience. And you mentioned the director's cut of Donnie Darko. Same thing when Walter Hill went back in, and to go back, he did his director's cut or director's version of The Warriors, and he put in all these comic book references and animated sequences and these frames that was. But I think everybody goes, oh, he went in and added this stuff. It's like it wasn't in the original version, not because he didn't want it, because he couldn't afford it. And that stuff's all in the original script. And he was told, you can't do this. We're going to cut back. And that was all the stuff that went. And he puts it back in, and it's terrible. It just doesn't work. And he's actually, I interviewed him about that, and he goes, well, that's what I always wanted to do. And I wanted to put it back. And I'm like, yeah, possibly shouldn't have. And it's a classic case of, just because you do a remake, it doesn't get rid of the original version. Well, just because you go in and do a director's cut, it doesn't get rid of the cut that worked.
Right.
And, the Warriors, I don't think if he'd have done the Warriors that he wanted to do first time round, it would have been anywhere near what, the kind of audience response over time, because it doesn't have that leanness, that grittiness, that all you get is exactly what you want from the story, which is makes the war. I think that's the hook with the Warriors. It is like you get nothing you don't need. There's
it's very, very lean. I think you're right.
On the bone of that film whatsoever.
Right.
I'm going to be the guy who stands up for Xanadu as a cult film, although I realize that's maybe the most niche cult film that's ever existed. It doesn't matter how receptive you are to cult films. Either you're going to be really into it because you dig ELO and neon and roller skating, or not. So is that even a cult film at that point, or is that a fetish film?
Maybe. I'm right now, while I'm talking to you, I'm opening up a document so that I have the films that didn't make it for part 1.
Ooh.
And 2 and 3, but they're on the list for potential part 3.
Well,
I'm looking to see if Xanadu is on there, and it is on there. So my actor, Danny Wolf, he argues for films that I said in a million years are not cult films. So, he argues for things like Walking Tall. And I go, what is Walking Tall? And he argues about it. He says it's a cult film. And the reasons being, the other one that I was shocked, which is a cult film, Somewhere in Time. Have you heard about the Somewhere in Time?
I've watched it so many times.
That was new. That was news to me that it's got this unbelievable cult following.
Might it be the only romantic drama cult film that performed like shit in the box office? It was badly reviewed, and yet all these years later, people still love it. I can't think of another.
There's a
romantic drama.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. We have a list. There's 100 and some films on this list. So.
You could keep going. And
we could do 10 more volumes. We really could.
And I think that's part of the problem with people trying to decide what more recent films are cult or not, because cult is about only time will tell to some extent. And sometimes that's unfortunate, like Space Jam.
I don't get Space Jam even now as you're talking about it.
I know. I wanted to ask, is Repo Man on your list?
Yeah, Repo Man was on the list.
Did it not make the movies though?
No. Well, Alex Cox wouldn't talk. He refused to talk about. He refused. He said, "I'm not talking about Repo Man anymore." He said he'll talk about any films but Sid and Nancy and Repo Man.
But nobody wants to talk about his other films.
Who wants to? I mean, I was like, okay, but it's Repo Man, and Harry Dean Stanton had passed away, so it's kind of hard to include it. I mean, again, it's on the list, but.
I mean,
what are you gonna do?
I mean, you don't have to have him. You can get Emilio Estevez, who I'm sure is dying for anyone to point a camera at him.
Yeah, well, we'll get him in volume 4 for sure.
Dennis McElwain says Battle Beyond the Stars, which I think is an excellent choice right there. That was what was that? Wasn't that Cameron who was involved in that? An early Cameron script?
Yeah, I think so. It's not on my list. Bucket of Blood is.
Bucket of Blood, of course,
on
Corman's
the list.
arguably maybe Corman's greatest, and one of the few films where Dick Miller plays the lead character.
Yes, and we had a couple Corman films that we thought were more essential: Death Race 2000 and Rock and Roll High School, and we would include Bucket and Blood if we did another volume for sure.
It was suggested as well anything by Peter Greenaway.
The Wife, The Lover, what was that
Cook,
movie?
the Thief, the wife,
Lover.
his wife, her lover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's potentially
But
not on the list, but
that's one where that adds another element in that there are films that in certain countries are just treated as like that's canon, but in other countries, then it has cult status. So there's a geographic element to this as well. So early Greenaway in the UK, as you can tell, not local to Austin, is that's just. You handed that a copy of that at film school in the UK, and that in the setting, whereas if you want to talk about cult Greenaway in the UK, you'd probably say Z and Two Noughts, which is way more difficult and involves stop motion rotting zebra carcasses. So
was that called Z and Two Zeros here? I don't know. I'm just trying to find out.
Paul, this is the eye roll I have to do at Chris like once or twice a week. It's just,
okay,
it just comes with the territory.
But you have the third chapter of your series is comedies, which is an unusual exploration for cult films.
Well, comedies and camp classics.
Yeah.
So just to sort of to give you the idea, I don't know if we talked about this on your podcast. We really intended to shoot 6 1-hour episodes, and they were broken into the original movie, subversive directors, campy classics, horror, sci-fi, and comedy. And the idea was that films could fit into multiple categories. They could fit in, and so you sort of like Night of the Living Dead is in the horror, is in part 2. It's also a midnight movie, so it literally could have lived in both of those. It could also be in the subversive director. I mean, so it's very hard. Rather than do a countdown 1 to 100 or 1 to 50, or do it in date order when they came out, starting with Freaks in 1932, we decided to try to give them some context and to give it a little more discussion and to kind of mix it up a little bit. So it's very, very hard. So when you do comedy and we threw camp in with comedy, it totally works because everything that's campy is funny in the case of these films.
I asked because someone suggested Office Space. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's on your list of the.
Yeah, Office Space is in there, and the good news about Office Space, Mike Judge. We did an interview with Mike Judge and Ron Livingston and Gary Cole. I mean, we have everybody but Jennifer Aniston, and it's really a good study. And the thing about Office Space, I mentioned it earlier, it's a bona fide home video hit. And Mike Judge tells a story in the documentary about how it had failed so poorly at the box office, and he was just hoping for DVD rentals and sales to make it work. And he was in a Blockbuster Video, and he heard these 2 girls renting Office Space, and he followed them around the store and stayed behind them just to make sure they were really going to rent his movie. I mean, that's how invested he was in it. And Office Space, I mean, it's also one of the more quotable, one of the more popular movies that did nothing at the box office, but literally home video made it a huge hit. And now it's actually playing at rep cinemas and wherever they have midnight movies, and a lot of times on college campuses as well.
And weirdly, Idiocracy is having, which is another Mike Judge film, is having the same effect right now, where it came out and it was not a hit at all with critics or with audiences. But I think part of with that one, it turned out to be pretty prescient. So
I mean, we're living it. We're living Idiocracy. So it's a documentary at this point.
So
I think that's Mike Judge, though. Mike Judge is a guy who whoever gives him money goes, it's not an immediate investment, but it's like bonds rather than stocks. 20 years time, it'll pay off, but I'm not going to make money off day trading on Mike Judge. It's just not going to happen.
But we all love Mike Judge. He's from Austin.
No,
He still lives in Austin. He shows up in weird random places and is very pleasant. He used to be a regular at a bar I was the bar manager for, so that was nice.
Yeah,
Anyway, let's go on to the challenge round, which I
Yay.
just officially started as of this episode. Aren't you lucky?
No.
I'm going to pick one of y'all to answer first. The other one can pick up if the other one does not get it right. These are 5 cult films. I think none of them are on one of your 3 documentaries, although they certainly might be on the others. I'm going to give Paul the first shot here to figure out which one this is. And I'm going to throw that up right there. What cult film is this a still from? Paul.
I am stumped.
It's a hard one. I'm starting hard, to be fair. They get easier, I swear, at points. So no idea? I will give you a clue. This was a very well-known cult director's adaptation of a book, but also his response to a television show ripping off one of his movies.
I am stumped. I apologize. I do not know.
Richard Whittaker.
It is Don Coscarelli's adaptation of John Dies at the End.
That is correct.
Thank you. I recognize the meat carcass.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I highly recommend, from both a cult novel to a cult movie. It was his reaction to some level, which I have personally from talking to him. He was pretty pissed off when his movie Phantasm was thoroughly ripped off by the television series Supernatural, which I'm not throwing shade at. I love Supernatural, but was like, they ripped us off, and we tried to contact them to say, hey, obviously you love Phantasm. Why do you have this director, Don Coscarelli, come on your show? And they just wouldn't even return his calls. I was like, wow, that's kind of lame.
Ooh.
All right. Number 2, we'll give Richard the first shot at this one.
Oh, dear.
What is this from?
That is a shot of the act of shunting from Brian Yuzna's Society.
That is correct. Brian Yuzna, who also did...
Oh, I'm trying to remember as a producer, because he had a habit of working with people and it not happening twice.
That's true. Anyway, he worked as a producer more than he did as a director,
Yeah.
I believe, on films like Reanimator, From Beyond.
Apparently, I was dropped into a game show with the hardest questions ever.
This is what Chris does.
Yep. This is what I do. I'm sorry. I'm mean. Paul, this is your chance to win it back. For all the money, what cult film is this scene from?
Well, that's the kid who played Harry Potter, right?
It is indeed.
Yep.
Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah. Daniel Radcliffe.
Don't feel bad. Almost no one saw this movie, so
You are the worst game
But you're
show
saying
host
it's a
Chris.
cult. You're saying it's a cult film, though.
yeah,
so.
it's a film that like people got so freaked out by when it came out. What, 2 years ago, Richard? 3 years ago? Maybe?
3, I think.
Okay, I knew Richard.
I'm gonna guess it's not even a cult film, but I don't know. I don't know which one. I don't know the title.
Okay, so
Sorry.
this is, and I apologize. I'm certainly not trying to make you look bad, Paul. All right,
It's
go ahead,
fine.
Richard.
It's fine. It's
Go
fine.
ahead, Richard.
Swiss Army Man.
Swiss Army Man. It's a film that's rapidly making its way to being a solid cult release because it's so goddamn weird. It didn't make much money because it was so weird. People were like, I don't want to see that. That's gross.
Mhm.
And people won't stop talking about it who are fans of it.
I will definitely check it out.
The basic plot is that a guy gets stuck on an island, and the only thing he finds is Daniel Radcliffe's corpse, which he uses to basically as a multi-purpose tool, and it gets weirder and weirder and weirder, and there's a lot of dead Daniel Radcliffe farting.
Yeah, he literally uses him as a jet ski at one point, sitting on him and clenching him and making him fart to use it as a jet ski effect. I mean, if that's not a cult film, I don't know what is.
It's one of these ones where I think the failure was that, like, the selling point just sounded gross, but the people who could get past the grossness. It was directed by a directing duo called the Daniels, who also famously did the video for Turned Down for What. And it's just
Great video,
packed with all this visual ingenuity and creativity that you look at and go, oh yeah, no, this is really actually very smart. But the idea of like farting dead Daniel Radcliffe was like box office poison at the time. And I'm still shocked they got any money to make it at all and weren't just told like, here's the door. And also, the number for a good therapist. 5 years, that will be like a genuine, like, be able to chart the growth of a cult movie.
Agreed.
But it's at the very first stages now.
Yeah.
Well, Daniel, have you guys seen Miracle Workers? This little TBS.
Oh yeah,
no. I hear it's great.
Yeah, it's really funny. They're on their second season. It's the showrunner Simon Rich. Very, very funny. Very deadpan. He's terrific in it. Daniel Radcliffe playing against type, of course. It's on TBS. I think they're in the second season. It's very, very funny.
Yeah, and aren't they each season's a totally different story, like Blackadder or something?
Yeah. So and it's based on a book that Simon Rich wrote called What in God's Name. And Steve Buscemi in season 1 plays God. And but season 2, I think, is actually better. It's more absurd, and it's definitely worth it if you like Daniel Radcliffe or Steve Buscemi. It's kind of
and
cool.
Who doesn't like Steve Buscemi?
Of course.
I'm sorry, I would argue who doesn't like Daniel Radcliffe. If you don't, just because he was Harry Potter, come on, get over it.
No, that's a given. But Daniel Radcliffe was never a firefighter.
That's fair.
There you go.
All right.
That's my favorite Steve Buscemi story, was that people saw photos of somebody in a firefighter's uniform after 9/11 in New York and just was like, the guy looks like Steve Buscemi. And it turned out it was Steve Buscemi, because before he became an actor, he was a firefighter, and he was just like, they need experienced firefighters.
They need help,
he just went to New York and never talked about it.
That's great.
We're going to go to the next to last round. Richard, you get to go first on this one. I actually wonder, you might not get this one.
Maybe.
What cult film are we looking at here? See?
It's yours, Richard, because I have no idea.
Some very famous actors, or at least actresses, in this. What do you think? You want to hint?
I am stumped.
Based on a comic book.
Is it Tank Girl?
It's Tank Girl. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Impressive. Very impressive.
I can't believe you got that.
It was either when you said comic book, because I was like, Josie and the Pussycats? Is there some like weird fetish sequence in there that I didn't know about? It's like, Tank Girl.
I still don't get the Josie and the Pussycats thing. I'm not saying it's not a thing, because obviously it is.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Yeah.
It is a thing. And I was shocked as well. But I will say this, true. I mean, full disclosure, the director and writer is my cousin. So,
well, there you go.
It's so weird, though. It's one of those films where it's not like a lot of cult films where people go, oh, it's really good, and I can see why people don't like it. Like the cult films I like, I can see why audiences don't like it. Josie and the Pussycat fans are fanatical, and
I'm not a Josie and the Pussycat fan, but I like it, and it's not because my cousin wrote and directed it. I like it. I like the movie. What can I say?
But there's people I meet, and they're like, "No, you don't understand. This is the greatest film of that decade." I'm like, "Okay, did I miss something?"
Yeah.
It's fine and fun, but like,
notice how no one is coming out of the woodwork to defend Jem and the holograms.
Yeah.
It's just not happening. All right, so let's go to our last one. And sorry, Paul, this one is you, but this one I think you may get.
You're the worst host.
I didn't pick the most obvious choice picture, but it's still a seen passed around picture from this definitely long-term cult film from the 70s.
I don't know. El Topo?
And a solid guess, the style alone, but no, this one in fact is from another film by the same director, Alejandro Jodorowsky's Holy Mountain, which I will
Holy Mountain.
I will die on the hill is a better film than El Topo.
You'll die on the Holy Mountain.
I will die on that Holy Mountain. But yes, that was our challenge round. Thank you.
Wow, I did well.
The idea is not so much to humiliate our guests as it is to make people talk about more cult films, quite frankly.
Cool. Very cool.
Very cool. So yeah, very.
There was one thing I was on there, Paul, talking about going back to your film, which I hope becomes a cult in its own right. When you were working with the director, was there any film that you were like, you will die on the hill, and had to really argue with him to include? What was the one where you're like, no, you don't understand, this is a cult film that we need to get in
I think we were, there was nothing I had to fight for. Of course I had final say, so it didn't matter, but we were pretty much in sync. I think it was more about my disappointments on things that I really, really wanted, and you had to let go, and that was the harder they come. Jimmy Cliff, a seminal midnight movie, and I felt strongly it needed to be in there. And my director said, look, we don't have anybody from the film. And we tried to get Jimmy Cliff. We tried for months and months, for even a year, we tried to get Jimmy Cliff, and we just couldn't get him to agree. We would have flown to Jamaica to do it if he was in Jamaica. And he wouldn't do it. He didn't want to talk about it. And so in that case, I sort of had to let it go. I didn't want to, because I thought to myself, it just won't work without Jimmy Cliff. I mean, you need Jimmy Cliff. Conversely, Harold and Maude stayed in despite the fact that Bud Cort wouldn't do it, because Bud Cort was offended that we called Harold and Maude a cult film. He said it's simply one of the great films of all time. It's not a cult film. And we're like, okay, but it's one of the great cult films of all time. And he refused to do the interview. But in that case, I felt that Harold and Maude needed to be included. It just, you couldn't do a cult film documentary without it. It would be like leaving Pink Flamingos out. You just can't do it. But I don't think there was anything that I fought for to keep, because my director and I and our supervising producer, Christine, we were all on the same page for the most part. We kind of were in sync. A lot of it fell together because we've had people from the films that were willing to talk or willing to go on camera, and that sort of pushed the narrative a little bit. Who was
the interview where you were either happiest with getting, or one where you were just like, you didn't think you were going to get them, and suddenly you get this, it just becomes this gold mine? Because you always get those ones where you're like, I'm never going to get them, that's bucket list, it's not happening, and then you get them and it's just like, it's better than you could have hoped for.
John Cleese. John Cleese for Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Having grown up a Python fan, love movies, love their TV shows, I always wanted to meet John Cleese. I just wanted to meet him. And he was hard because he was on tour with Monty Python and the Holy Grail. He was going city to city, and he was playing like 3,000 seat theaters where they would show Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and then he would do a Q&A afterwards. And it was hard to track him down. And his, it was sort of like, well, he's tired of talking about Monty Python and the Holy Grail. But finally, we got his manager to agree to let us fly to Cincinnati, where he was doing a screening of Holy Grail that evening. And he had, it was a Sunday, and he had driven all night for some reason from his previous location, and let us into his suite and said, you go set up, I'm going to go take a nap. And we set up, and an hour later, he came out of his suite and gave us just a fantastic interview. It was better than I expected. And then he said, when we were done, he said, okay, you know what, you guys, I'm going to go down and get something to eat. You take your time, take your time. We could have ripped him off. We could have stolen his clothes. He left us in the suite and said, you guys finish up. And it was probably one of the best hours of my film buff life, just getting to hang out with John Cleese. He was everything you'd want him to be or expect him to be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so freaking jealous right now hearing about this. Talk about I've changed the format. Top 10 people I would like to hang out with. And it makes me so sad. His new marketing thing is come see my tour. I'll be dead after this. It's his marketing thing. John Cleese?
John? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
this is your last chance.
What did he said when Terry Jones died? He goes, 2 down, 4 to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually your interview with him sounds like a few years ago I got to interview William Friedkin.
Oh, great.
And I think we talked, it was supposed to be about The Exorcist, and we talked about everything apart from The Exorcist, including the time he got to see some brain surgery in person. Yeah. He was just like, yeah, they let me go in, and I just stood at the back. I went, what does that do? And they went, that means the leg goes like this. They poked him, the leg went like that. And he was like, yeah, great being William Friedkin.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, John wanted to talk about anything but Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but we got him. We got him centered. It worked out really well.
You keep talking because I have to let my cat in, or he's going to break through the door.
Okay. So Friedkin, have you seen the Friedkin doc yet?
Come in.
Yes, and I also saw he actually did a weird kind of sequel to The Exorcist, where he went and he found they allowed him to interview the Vatican's leading exorcist and let him sit in on an exorcism. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating because it's, they've never done that before. And they historically, the Roman Catholic Church have been very much like, well, exorcism, evil happens and there may be exorcisms, but we really don't want to talk about it. Now they're like, exorcisms.
It's kind of gross. That whole thing was kind of gross for me, where I'm like, you're kind of taking advantage of people. I mean, the Exorcist, that's fiction based on urban, on horror ideas. But going out and filming people actually going, no, but what if this is real? You're treading on manipulation.
There's a whole world of reality TV that lives on stuff like that. So.
Oh, not wrong. Yeah. Well, we have to do news, which we have very little news, but we have to go to that to some level and talk about that. And first off, I want to say Lovecraft Country. Holy crap. Who's not excited for this? I love the idea that they're taking a guy who is a rampant racist and making a show from the viewpoint of Black people set in his mythos. That absolutely kills me in how awesome it is. I pulled this particular story from Slash Film, who I think are great. Lovecraft Country. Jordan Peele running this thing alongside J.J. Abrams. The description here is Richard. You're more familiar with this than I am, aren't you?
A little bit, not hugely.
Well, thanks for not taking the microphone. Okay.
The trailer is awesome. We saw it on HBO last night, so it looks awesome.
It's a 1950s show across Jim Crow America with African-American characters where the one is looking for his missing father, who sent him a letter saying, come get me, with what they describe as, we can't go there. That's Lovecraft Country.
And adapted from a novel as well. So it's a literary adaptation, which is another fascinating part of the story here. That again, it's like, taking on Lovecraft from in a year where Lovecraft is coming back cinematically as well. With Underwater, which I'm on the record as hating, but it being a stealth Lovecraft film where you get to the end and go, Cthulhu. That happened. So it's the year of Lovecraft.
Well, in part 2 of Time Warp, the greatest cult films of all time, which is horror and sci-fi, we do Reanimator, and we do have the final Stuart Gordon interview. So,
wow!
We also have the final Toby Hooper interview and the final Sid Haig interview.
Stop interviewing horror icons.
We're killing icons.
Who killed the murder icons? We feel awful about it. We were scheduled to interview George Romero, and he died during production. It was awful, but we love Stuart Gordon and we love Reanimator, and it's a great piece. So
stay clear of Jason Blum. The industry cannot handle that much of a loss.
Seriously, those 4 all died from the time we started production till the time we came out. It's awful. We feel awful. We really do.
Yeah, but at least you got to talk. I mean, Stuart was he
was great.
He was great, and he was it's fascinating. You get some people who become cult directors because they do one thing that is just memorable. And then you've got these cult directors who they build this body of cult work, and I think Stewart was like Don Coscarelli. They have this body of work that just everything about it just screams cult, and it's not deliberate. It's just the thing that they the way they approach their filmmaking, and
he embraced it. So he totally embraced it, which we like. Of course, he was not defiant. He said, "Oh, I embrace it. This was put me on the map." So, and
he could have been pretty about it, because he came from a theater background. His first breakout theatrical show was he did the original production of David Mamet's Sexual Perversity in Chicago, which became About Last Night. He was he could have just stayed in theater and been extremely successful there, and he was like, you know what, I'll give this film thing a shot. And he's like, and he had this incredible success. And I got to see a few years ago, he produced a one-man show of Edgar Allan Poe. It was
Are you talking about the one he did at Fantastic Fest?
Yeah, he did that, but it was on tour for years. And he actually tried to get the money together to turn it into a film, but it was before Kickstarter was a thing, so he could never get the money together.
I want him to do a one-man show as his character from Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah.
What? The Andorians are cool. Don't tell me they're not.
That's true. But we're in this weird position now where, another part of cult is that people, it's part of their audience identity. But now with things like Kickstarter and GoFundMe and even Seed and Spark, which is a little bit different, but very much the same thing, people are identifying really heavily with a film before it even goes into production. And I find that really fascinating, with the mechanic of a cult film is it has a cult. It has this group you can look at. And now that you can almost, if your film is successful in that stage, you pre-build that cult. So the dynamic's really shifting for me. It's very fascinating to see that change.
All right, so we got to do one more news story before we go on to our next segment. And that is, this mystifies me. The real-life Conjuring house will be live streamed for 1 week. What is it you guys are expecting to happen? 2 families have lived there, I think maybe even 3, since the events of The Conjuring. And guess what happened?
Nothing.
Richard, what was it?
Nothing.
Nothing happened.
Nothing.
Right?
Absolutely
not a goddamn
nothing.
But now they're like, but what will happen? And they're
God, this could be a week of Geraldo going into Al Capone's basement, isn't it? It's gonna be nothing happening and still nothing happening. Anything happening? No, nothing happening.
Look at this trailer. Look at it. What are you going to do? You're trapped at home. Can you imagine if you were trapped in the Conjuring house like these people who we paid a lot of money to come in and set up some fishing line to shit in their house?
That's a nice house.
Good for them, right?
Nice wood paneling as well.
If they went to me tomorrow and said this happened, there was a bit you never knew, there were all these shit that happened in your house, I want to pay you this much money to come in and set some fishing line up to a beer can and knock it off a shelf. Yes, please do that.
Hey, if I'm in that house, if I'm trapped in that house for a week, I'm fixing that basement up, because that would make a great den.
Look at this. Look. Oh God, the ghosts are real. I'm sorry.
Rarely you are, Chris. Not your métier being sorry.
It's not. Anyway, guys, I want to say thank you for being here. Paul,
thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Genuine pleasure. Nice to meet you, Paul.
Richard, please take a look at the movies. Chris can send you the links, or Chris, you can give him my email address, and I'll be happy to send you anything you need.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Paul, anything you want to shout out before?
Just check out Time Warp, the greatest adult films of all time. Part 1, Midnight Madness. I keep saying adult. That was my previous production.
You worked for ABN, so
start over. Time Warp, the greatest cult films of all time. Midnight Madness on Amazon, iTunes, Fandango, wherever you rent movies. Part 2 in 2 weeks is called Horror and Sci-Fi, and Part 3 in June is Comedy and Camp. And any support it, and we hope we can do more. It'd be great. Thank you.
Very excited about it. Richard, do you want to hang out for Parks and Rec? I don't know if you saw it.
No, I got to head.
Okay.
I got to feed my family, so thank you so much.
All right.
Genuine
Well, thank
pleasure.
you so much. Please check out Time Warp. I really loved it. We got 2 more reviews coming out, including some behind the scenes stuff that we'll throw onto the next one with Paul.
Thanks,
so thank you guys.
Talk to you soon.
Genuine
Bye-bye.
pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
I'm
Richard.
still here. They haven't got rid of
Richard,
me yet. What?
I'm virtually hugging you.
Get off. Get off. Ew. 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 That's ew.
What?
Ew.
Okay, fine.
Ew.
Bye, Richard.
Bye.
Thank you, you guys. But we're not done because we're going to talk about Parks and Rec, the special, which I was so excited to see. Oh my God. When I first started watching Parks and Rec, it was with everyone else. It was like, wow, look at this cast. I can't wait to see this first season. It was terrible. And I stopped watching it. And then everyone was like, come back. And the first episode I came back to watch was the 3rd episode, Little Sebastian episode. And I lost my goddamn mind. It was like, this show is amazing. And I fell madly in love with it. I've watched the whole thing about 2.5 times now. I'm actually going on a rewatch right now. I had to pull my wife in the other room and go, this is one of the greatest moments in Parks and Rec of the Little Sebastian first episode where they pull him out and Nick Offerman's character does this. You know, Nick Offerman, traditionally very stoic. I mean, that kind of killed me. But I was super excited to see the show, this bringing it back. And so we brought in some of the crew to talk about it. First off, we have Harmony.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Hey, Harmony, you're not Mike. Now I can hear you. Okay.
All right, cool.
And then Nathan.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
And then we got Rose.
Hello.
Ben, Nod, did you actually see this or are you just here to... Okay, all right, there you go. And then Ben.
What else am I going to do but watch Parks and Rec? Come on.
That's
Right?
true. I would not surprised to see someone immediately complain, oh, great, it's just the coronavirus episode of Parks and Rec. I'm like, yeah, they're doing it for charity, asshole.
That's kind of what's going on right now. That's kind of the thing.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is go out. Like, I went out this weekend. Other people went out this weekend and saw... Are you done destroying my chair? Thank you. Went out this weekend and saw that all the restaurants, I live in Texas, they were like, oh, yeah, restaurants can reopen if they want. And the patios were packed and stories rampant from restaurants of people saying we refuse to wear our masks coming in and being total Karens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, and saying, nope, I'm not going to, no, I refuse. The law says I don't have to do anything but what I want at any given moment. The law says it.
Yeah, it hurts my soul.
So I'm sorry, stop complaining about an episode trying to be compassionate and kind about what is the right thing to do.
Exactly.
And it
Which
was
is exactly what
every
Leslie
bit-
Knope does.
To me, it felt every bit as valid as any of the other episodes of the show. Like, the writing was
Yeah.
still on point, and all the
Yeah.
members of the cast were bringing it, despite, you know, just being webcam footage.
Yeah, it felt like a real episode of the show, like a special one that they would have done at some point if it was still airing on NBC.
Yeah, if it continued, like, up until 2020, you could see them potentially doing an episode like this regardless.
Yeah. It was really smart. Like, everybody, I agree. I think it was Martin who said that everybody needs to be doing something like this. Any canceled show, just get
Yeah.
web stuff out there. That would be amazing. And I was like, yes, Pushing Daisies. Let's see that. But
I think the biggest achievement is they perfectly explain why Andy and April were not in the same room. That's exactly where
Yes.
Andy would be.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering how they were going to do that, and the way they pulled it off was fantastic.
yeah.
Especially the explanation with Anne, I thought was just so fucking
Yes.
valid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so
They're
great.
nerds. Yeah. That's
Oh,
where
yeah.
it should be.
By the way, I just pulled this up, a gathering of idiots. It's called a Kofefi. I just stumbled into this hole last night that apparently there's a slowly growing hashtag that is branch Covidians.
Yeah.
And I kind of like
Nice.
that.
I like it.
Or Covidiots. Yeah.
Too soon yet? Apparently not. No.
Yeah.
As they continue to prove it to be true, it's not too soon.
Yeah, exactly. But regardless of anything else, I think what they came up with was a show that managed to bring in the sort of like messages that are important to remind people of and made us laugh. It was really funny. Everybody did you notice that, good Lord, what is the main actress's name?
What,
Amy Poehler?
Amy Poehler.
Amy Poehler had a photo behind her in her
I saw
house,
that.
the wedding photo of her and the character Ben, and they're clearly not actually married in real life, but she went to the trouble to get that printed out. And put
I
it
heard
in.
they all got FedExes of all their props, which
Yeah.
really, like, just the small items just really help bring you back into the show.
Well, this
I was gonna say, the Johnny Karate suit alone must have been planned out.
Yes. Oh my God.
they put real effort into this. They obviously writing wise, because the jokes are genuinely funny. I mean, you heard with Purd sequence.
Oh my god!
Oh, God.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
The Lickin' Pass Festival being canceled in one of the parks.
Oh god!
Just really killed me. And then Dennis McElwain says, best one was Tammy too.
Tammy too.
God,
I
yeah.
figured she was going to make an appearance.
Yeah, she's actually married to Nick Offerman
Yes.
in real life. In fact, the reason she was on the show is because the producer was like, I have this crazy idea about Nick Offerman. What do you think? He's like, I love that. Let's do it. So that was
You know those two would love that idea, and of course that happened. So yes.
Yeah.
But I found it kind of brilliant and kind of charming, and I admit I teared up during the I'm such an idiot during the 5,000 Candles song.
Oh, I totally did. Like even before then, when they all showed up, I was like, "This is such a heartwarming
Oh, it
moment.
was
Everybody
so
coming
great.
together for Leslie."
I'm singing along, I'm going like, yeah. By the way, Jordan's like, oh, I got to be in on this. Oh, look at it. He's so upset. He's like, God damn it. Why wasn't I in on this from the get-go?
I know why, because I was recovering from my nephews returning and them using me like a human monkey bar. I will say about the
Is
parks.
that like a Canadian candy? I don't know what that is.
That would be good. I will say of the Parks and Rec special, I did love it as well. I absolutely adored it as like a second goodbye, more or less. But also, I feel like I'm agreeing with you guys. Yeah, this honestly did feel like a very legit Parks and Rec episode. Like, even if this happened during its original run, this is exactly more or less what I would expect of Parks and Recreation, and it absolutely killed me. I think you guys have mentioned, you heard with Purd and how they actually brought up Andy not being in the same room. I think another one of my favorite bits was some of the commercials, especially Jean Ralphio's.
John Ralphio, yes.
Because
That made my day.
I just absolutely love it. Like, I am so bored. Please help me.
House.
Which is like,
Yeah.
I feel you, man. I
Ben
feel
Schwartz
you.
going back to that character, it's like he's started like tone down his sense of humor like in other movies and stuff, and it's like then he goes back to John Ralphio. He's like, no, just go big. That's all you need
Yeah,
to do.
I was,
for that character."
yeah. I was about to say, I did like him as Sonic, but seeing him just like go right back into that was like, effortless.
So
It's
who-
really disappointing that
just
that
beautiful.
phone number wasn't real.
I answered.
I wanted to know if anybody called it. 'Cause I didn't.
I
didn't
did.
call
I
it,
honestly
so.
did. I paused it. I was like, okay, now I know.
Who wants to do it?
Okay. Okay.
Oh, no.
I'll do it.
Uh,
Somebody has to do the verse.
But no, that's not how that works. All right, fine, do the chorus. That's fine. Ready? All right, Harmony, take it.
Oh no, I don't want to do
I
it.
promise not to cry.
I don't believe you.
promise nothing. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Oh no, I'm not gonna do it. I got stage fright all of a sudden.
Will Sebastian is
Bye,
cool.
bye, Sebastian. No, I'm not gonna sing it. Put it down.
It is so
You're driving me
perfect though
crazy,
that Ben still does not understand Little Sebastian or the song. That's
Yes! I even loved how quick where I was like, you fucking respect that
I've rewatched
You know
the
that
Will
horse is
Sebastian
fat.
episode three times in the last few days.
So
one.
good.
Ben, did you hear he whinnied?
It's definitely made me want to rewatch it. It's definitely made me want to rewatch it or give another look. I actually do have the Pawnee book they made within the show.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
And that actually is a fun read, especially since it does have the full list of all the Pawnee town sign slogans. You know, it's like,
Cool.
oh, the world famous Julia Roberts lawsuit.
All right, so while I have you
It was
guys
so
here,
good.
why don't you tell me what your isolation picks are of what you've been watching? Don't pick something we've already reviewed on the site or about to review on the site. Pick something you haven't. Who wants to go first? Because I'm not going to maximize you until you tell me as much. Oh, Harmony's like, yeah, me, hello.
Yeah, because you've been mean to me today, and that's not okay.
What did I do?
So I started Never Have I Ever, and that's really good so far. So, and then also things that I just let slide, like I finally got through Schitt's Creek and finally got through
Yay.
Commitment, and they are all amazing, and I feel bad that I'm so far behind everybody else realizing how amazing these shows are. So this is an excellent opportunity if you're like me and you're just like, not giving TV as much of a chance as you would otherwise. Sitting down and just watching things that you know are going to be good, that everybody says it's going to be amazing, and it so far has been. So
It's time to
so
catch
definitely,
up.
yeah, time to catch up.
Nathan.
I've been watching a lot of the old Twilight Zone because it's all in our hands right now. Like, you almost forget that, like, they're just well shot, great ideas, great writers. Just, you forget that that's all at your hands and at your disposal with streaming services. And I've been just going through Breaking Bad with Alex,
Yep,
That's
which
fair.
always amazing.
that was a good one.
For sure.
Yeah.
Rose.
I've been going back through Schitt's Creek for the umpteenth time.
Hell yeah.
Finally got caught up on the new DuckTales cartoon, which is actually way better than I thought it would be. Not that I thought it was going to be bad.
definitely.
And Ben
Yeah.
Schwartz is in that. He's
Yeah,
voiced
he
one of them.
is.
Yeah. So that's
Such
awesome.
a good cast.
Yeah, the voice
And-
cast in general is nuts.
Oh, absolutely.
I finally watched Community from start to finish. I had given up on it back in 2012 and finally now have the opportunity to watch it all at once, and I don't regret stopping watching it back then.
I disagree so hard. 5 and 6 are so good.
I would
I
say,
agree.
like, there was so much controversy in our in-house conversation with her going, just not a fan. I'm like,
Ugh.
I get it. I think that first 3 seasons are amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
A couple really good 4th season episodes, and 5th season less so, and
Yeah.
6th season is kind of terrible.
Yeah.
It's not terrible.
Painful.
It's not terrible. I really
That
like
show
it.
still has
Really
the
great end.
most relatable
I mean-
character ever for me.
When they brought Keith David to the cast, I thought it was so entertaining. I mean, it'll never reach the highs of season 1 through 3, but the whole my name is Elroy Patashnik and I'm addicted to encouraging white people is like one of the best bits of the show.
That and Paget Brewster. I will watch anything with Paget Brewster. It's never bad.
And even Jonathan Banks for the little bit that he's on is awesome. Like,
Great.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I love that show. It's one of my favorites.
Rose, did you have something else you wanted to bring up before we... No? You're not going through Twin Peaks yet? Have you done Twin Peaks?
Oh,
I did
yeah.
that.
Well, hey, I actually visited the actual, like, a lot of the filming locations for it right before the world decided to blue screen. So, yeah, maybe I should rewatch the show.
I mean, it feels like you got the statue the in the back of your house there, like from the Red Room. So it felt like maybe you were ready for that. I don't
Wait.
know.
How long has that been there?
I love it. Ben, who's always dying to tell us what he thinks. What do you think?
And you're always happy to shit on it till you're wrong, and it's great
I
when that
know.
happens.
For the record, I would like to say I shit on him in the same way I used to shit on Grant. I love him.
Aw.
Love him to death.
Love you too, Chris, especially for the
game.
cats that I get to play with when we're not all quarantined. It's great.
Exactly.
Yeah. No. Guys, you guys have touched on a lot of the other stuff I'm watching, though. The one that I finally picked up was New Girl because I didn't watch that when it was on the air, and I was like, this show's so perfectly for me. And then like YouTube found it was like, hey, you remember that show you wanted to watch? Here's like a dozen clips that are great, and yeah, that's been what I've been watching for the most part the last couple weeks.
Show's really good.
Yeah.
It faltered past season 2, but that cast is just so entertaining to watch, and the amount of improv in that show just really keeps it going. I still haven't watched the final season though.
They definitely sell it. Even when it was weaker, there's still moments that just shine because of them. And it's got that community kind of weirdness to it, where it's like there's some believability to this, and then it's just like they'll pull a reference out of their ass that makes no sense, that only works for like one person in the world. I'm like, all right, that's my kind of humor.
By the way,
fucking great as the show goes on.
Rose, I'm not offended, obviously, because I'm not some weird right-wing freak show, but what is up with the Canada mug? What's going on there?
It's my coffee. Yeah. This is my favorite coffee mug.
Okay, I just wonder if there's a particular reason. Are you a dual citizen? Are you like already plotting your escape? Is this marketing?
Well, that's true, but no, it's just my favorite coffee mug.
Like, there's a slow motion version of this where the words come in Canada, like the most beautiful country ever, except for us. I'm just saying. Jordan, what do you got?
Well, as far as TV goes, I've actually been going back through Veep.
Great show.
Yes, I've absolutely been going back for Veep because I thought, I don't know, maybe I'd like to see politics do something. Anything.
I kind of wanted to do that with the West Wing for a while, where I would just watch an episode every time Trump made like a public mistake.
Yeah.
I can't
and then
watch
I was
the
just
West Wing
like,
because of him.
Yeah, no, like I started that back when he was elected, and then he just keep making multiples per day, and I'm like, there's not enough West Wing to fit in between.
I just marathoned it again after he got elected because I'm like, I need to have the faith and optimism politics used to give me. And that show still holds up. Dear God, that is Sorkin wanking the whole entire time, but it's worth it for everybody.
It is.
I can't watch it.
Veep, I'll say, is still one of the most absolute funniest shows ever. I mean, I already loved Armando Iannucci from The Thick of It, and of course how brilliant In the Loop was when that came out. So I absolutely love it, and also just going back and hearing some of the best insults and zingers on this show.
Jolly Green Jizz Face.
12 Years a Slave to Coming in My Own Hand, Benedict Cumbersnatch, Teenage Mutant Ninja Asshole. And just some of the best lines, like, that is like using a croissant as a dildo. No. Let me elaborate. It doesn't get the job done. It leaves a fucking mess.
That show was so great. I was satisfied with the finale, and I was shocked that people didn't like it as much.
I liked it a lot. It very much fit in with the show. And I will say, as far as movies go, I finally saw Professor Marsden and a Wonder Woman. I really enjoyed that.
I've been meaning to watch that for a couple
It's on Hulu right now.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
Yes. And since I heard it was leaving HBO now, at the end of the month, I decided to finally just in one double feature watch both Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You.
Those are so good.
I
only saw the first one.
I really liked it. It is very much like Scream and Groundhog Day's, weird mutated offspring, but it actually works, and I found myself highly enjoying it. Yeah. Sequel, still really good. I do like the way that plays around with things, even with the more really weird, outrageous way they have to justify, like, we're doing the same shit again.
See, I thought they justified it pretty well, and the sequel plays up more of like a Back to the Future type of vibe instead of Groundhog Day, and it's so good for it.
That really worked, and I keep hearing people say, like, ooh, maybe a third one. I'm like, you know what? Look, we got a good thing here. Let's just leave it as it is.
I think any Groundhog's Day ripoff really like falls on the shoulders of the lead actor, and Jessica Roth is so good in that movie.
Yes,
really
most definitely.
I definitely want her to get some more prizes. I hope both these movies are like a great launching pad for her.
So we're gonna go to final thoughts for this show. We're gonna go to Harmony here. Harmony, what do you got for your final thoughts?
Not a Christian reason.
Chris has spent the last 5 minutes figuring out how to do that.
That's what you were doing.
God damn
You
it.
know, don't point out the magic, man. What the fuck?
This is all I have.
There's
Hey,
an
keep
absolute
kayfabe
reason.
alive.
The reasons are all my own, and I'm just gonna. Yeah, no, it's fine. What do I want to say? I have no idea. I can't. What do I do with this? This is here now. I don't know.
It's fine. I'll get rid of it. Oh, there you go. Back to the harmony. Harmony.
So, final thoughts. I really want this all to be over, but I want us all to be safe and healthy. And I really enjoyed the Parks and Rec episode. I'm going to go watch it again. I don't know. I'm glad that I'm trapped in my house right now because I get to experience all this media that I've let pass me by just because trying to have a life or whatever. And it's it's nice to kind of go through all this. And please check out my husband's artwork at Archangel Arts on Facebook. So Michael Van Slyke, I love you. There you go.
Make him join the goddamn group.
I've tried. So we've only got this one setup. So
Fair enough. All right.
So,
So Nathan. Oh, all right. Caught in the
Yeah,
middle,
caught in the
drinking.
middle. Yeah. Half South African whining. No, I really, really, really enjoyed this episode of assholes. I really enjoyed this episode of Parks and Rec, even though it really didn't I don't know. I want them to put it on Hulu in general, just with the rest of the series, because it really just fits in with the rest of the series. It's weirdly inventive, despite just being a bunch of people on webcams like we are.
aren't they moving it to the NBC only platform though?
Peacock.
I thought the Peacock platform. That's
This
what I
still sounds
heard.
made up to me.
Are they
It
taking
does.
off?
It's unreal. I don't know. It
Better
was very
not.
suspicious that they put that at the end of the episode. I was like, oh no.
Well, they did already put it on YouTube. That's actually where I saw it instead of
Yeah.
having to pull up Hulu.
Right.
Like, all I care about Peacock is they put up all Night Court, so.
Fair enough. All right. Sorry, you got distracted for a minute by being clever. All right, let's move on to Rose. Sorry, you don't need the. You don't give me free Thai food, so I should probably take that off. I'll put that on.
It's true. It's true. Parks and Rec is my happy place, and it was absolutely wonderful to be able to see it again. And I really enjoyed the fact that Aubrey Plaza's house looks exactly like you would expect it to.
Expected to.
I don't think she had to do very much set dressing at all. They just turned on the camera and let her go. And in general, I just want off this ride, Mr. Bones.
Yeah.
Fair. Dan?
Let's see what you got. Anything? There you go. There you go. Now, I think we've talked enough about Parks and Rec that I think we all loved it. The only one I know who didn't was Justin, but he can be wrong many parts of the time. That's okay by me.
Yeah, Justin is definitely wrong.
Oh, Justin!
Your heart.
Oh.
He's a monster. A monster.
Real monster. But no, I'll say otherwise. Yeah, wear your goddamn masks. I went out.
Definitely.
God damn it. Chris is mad at Chris for no reason. That's actually
Damn it, not again.
That one's actually for Monkey. Monkey is mad at Chris for no reason.
Oh.
No, sorry. There you go. I'm still figuring out how buttons work.
We'll get you a remedial course in pushing
Granddad.
things. It'll be okay.
No,
But no, yeah, wear your damn masks. I went
Wear your
up
fucking
to
mask.
Walgreens earlier, and there was people sitting in having picnics without masks on. I kind of wanted to just roll down my window and shout at them, but then, that's dealing with people not on the internet, and that's terrifying now. You can't have that. Speaking of dealing with people on the internet, since I don't know where we're getting the plugs, we're streaming every Friday as well, so watch that stuff. We'll be posting about it later this week.
Fair enough. Oh yeah, it's you.
So, awesome. Parks and Rec was amazing. The only thing I worried about it was how's this going to fit in with the timeline from the series finale. Fit in very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot to do this last week, but if you want a little bit more of me, I do have my own original writings at corners of my notebook on WordPress, so please do check that out. Have an ongoing story on there right now. I'm starting to get towards the end of it, and hey, just a little
as long
reminder.
as it's not LiveJournal, we're good.
No, it's not.
Does that exist anymore?
Hey, I will
No.
not tolerate this LiveJournal disrespect.
Oh no,
Right, no, LiveJournal is life. No,
No.
I miss
Also,
LiveJournal. I miss it.
yeah,
I
I'm
still
also-
have a lifetime account.
I do also just want to tell everybody out there, look, sometimes it is okay to not be okay, because this is a very fucked situation we are in
Yes.
that none of us expected. So it's okay
Very
to
weird
just
time.
not be okay sometimes. That is fine. Also down with capitalism. Okay.
Got my guillotine check.
I mean, we
Fair
just have
enough.
Nathan shouting at every Uber Eats driver that comes without a mask.
Right.
So you're doing great.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to do that anymore.
Oh,
Yeah, no, Uber Eats is just like, no, just fuck. I don't care what a tip he gives. No.
I don't even get.
All right,
tips,
last
but what's
chance.
that?
Last chance, people watching this 4 questions, and I realize there's a bit of delay. We're going to go through randomly backwards through this.
Oh God.
Kevin Morano says classic Jordan. No one knows what that means.
I think he's mean, like, even when I'm being overly positive and helpful, I have
Tucker
a.
came in at the right time.
That sounds like all of us.
Frank DeVillo is still alive.
Okay.
This is what happens when you go backwards through comments. It's our backwards comments run.
We gotta go back.
Frank's mask is uncomfortable. We're doing a benefit for Frank's mask right here. If you choose to donate to Oneofus.net. We'll give him the money.
We'll get him one of those. We'll get him one of those paper clips that holds the band off his ears. They'll be
Yes,
great.
please. We can give him a good, strong mask. Not as good as this
Hi.
one. Though.
Donovan
Hi,
says
Donovan.
hi.
Hi, Donovan.
Marco says, "Oh, he's got reasons." What are we? This is more fun backwards. Am I wrong?
This is actually pretty great.
Yeah, I kind of like this.
Comments
This was a good
backwards.
idea.
This is yeah, we should keep this up.
I miss John Lair and Kent Marco Noella. It's a how you say it.
Hey, he's actually on the good fight, so
That's actually half a haiku.
Oh, the good fight's so great.
it is.
Oh.
I talked about Peacock on the TV Dudes last September. I'm sure you did, Dennis.
and it's still not relevant.
Does it
Not until
sting?
Night Court is on.
Does it still sting? Donovan also says hi.
Hi.
Hi, Donovan.
Clear that he
Hello.
said hi. Frank wants to be clear that Night Court is important on some level.
Yes.
Yeah. Left-wing is porn for left-leaning centric.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not
yeah.
untrue.
No
Yeah,
lies
that's-
detected.
I'm not saying I jack off to the West Wing for hope, but yeah.
Anyway, that wraps us up. I went about 20 questions back, so I think that's enough. Thank you, everybody, for being here. You guys are awesome. Wait, I don't want it to end on Frank saying "same girl, same." No offense, Frank. We're just gonna go out and say thank you, all you guys. This has been so much fun. Oneofus.net has been really trying our best to expand our voices that are being heard, to expand the places where you can in fact hear said voices. We want to hear from you as well. Thank you for listening. Thank you for promoting. It makes a huge difference. We will be back in another week for this show, but God damn it, we got stuff coming out every single day on Oneofus.net, on the website, on the Facebook, on the Twitter, on the Twitch. There's stuff constantly coming out, and we're always going to be working on more. Ben has been expanding what we can do because he's young and I'm old and have no idea what I'm
Well,
doing.
because I was on Twitch a decade ago, so I actually know what it is in streaming.
I never
you-
heard of it
Happy
till
now
a week
for
ago.
you.
Yeah, pretty much when Brian was like, "Hey, you want to be on my Twitch stream?" You're like, "You mean like my Facebook streams?" No, Twitch.
Is that a thing?
A place people go to not get their information stolen and sold to the government.
Is that what Twitch is doing?
Look, have you
I mean, I
ever wanted
guess.
to play Duke Nukem and yell at someone? Here you go.
Well, yeah.
I wanted to get the developers of the
Well,
last
now
Duke
you
Nukem. Does that
can.
count?
Can I do both?
Actually, yes. Yeah, Duke Nukem Forever is a piece of trash.
Yeah, it is. But no, Tessa, we do. So basically, we do have 2 cycling shows every other Friday. This Friday is the movie watch party, and next Friday is back to the Unstable Top Gamers. We're trying some new stuff again next time. Last 2 have been some great times playing Cards Against Humanity, and last week Jackbox. So yeah, we got some more stuff coming along.
Which
What are we watching?
you should point out that it is available for people who are watching to join the game.
Some of them we might be trying, some that are not, but that's we got a lot of stuff in the air because there's so many other games on the internet to try. But yeah, definitely we're trying to include as much of the viewers as we can in a lot of these games when they're available.
All right, well that wraps up this end. We're at 9.5 hours. We've been going for 9.5 hours. We've raised $3 for charity.
Lock the doors. Please help Chris.
That's actually so much more money than I thought we raised. We said the charity was for Frank.
wait, I'm sorry. I got to go back here. I wish I could pull back what you were just doing.
Oh my God.
It's killing me. Oh, I'm sorry. That's it. We're going to end our broadcast. We'll be back with this show in another week with who knows what, but lots more stuff on there. Please watch us. Think about becoming a subscriber. That's what pays for this stuff. Thank you so much. Thank you to all you guys. You're amazing. And good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
So long.